This Future Cities Africa episode is in conversation with NEXTEC. Sean Bennet, Group Executive for NEXTEC, an entity of the EOH Group, is my guest today. We discuss how NEXTEC helps in building smarter African cities. Sean, welcome. Can you give us a brief introduction to your background and current role at NEXTEC?
Personally, I've got had various different roles, but came through. I was originally an investment banker, and then I ran a junior mining company. And then Stephen brought me in to run NEXTEC, which is one of the two main subsidiaries of the EOH, to help him sort of turn it around, because I think in 2019 the EOH was going through some challenges. So it was forming a new team, which we've largely done. So it was heavily loss-making and it's now profitable. It's a business that's got two main stripes, or pillars, as we like to call them. The first one is around people, which is obviously critical in any sort of business. We do training, we help clients in relation to their BEE scores. We do functional outsourcing as part of our talent business. We do temporary employment services, recruitment, etc. So that's the people stripe. And then on the other side, we've got an infrastructure stripe where we've got various different solution groups. So we can provide clients with solutions around environmental, logistics, building and security, water, power, and connectivity. We're obviously very closely allied to the broader EOH group, which is predominantly an ICT company. So a lot of the solutions can be ICT focused, and we work closely with our sister division, which is IOCO.
Thanks, Sean. Talking smart cities, what is your definition of a smart city in the African context?
You are seeing one or two places around Africa where new cities are being built and they're integrating technology into it as part of the fabric of the city itself. I think, probably we are slightly different to a lot of the rest of the world, at least the developed markets. So to me, a smart city is a smarter city than, so it's taking the bricks and mortar that we currently have, it's taking the infrastructure we have, and it's adding the technology layer to help us manage it better. So, the use of IoT, the use of building management systems, taking technology to help us in relation to some of the other infrastructure requirements. And that's really what it is. And it's just, what's smart today isn't smart tomorrow. What's smart today is incredibly smart compared to yesterday. So it's a constant moving environment, but it's just trying to use technology to help us manage it. A lot of things can be managed on a cell phone nowadays. A lot of our clients are coming to us and talking to us about, because we're seeing obviously an escalation, things like power prices. Building management systems can take out a lot of the costs because it can help you manage it more efficiently and from a central place. So there's a lot of technology out there it's got to be fit for market, it's got to be value add, it's got to create the benefits that it needs to do. So,
Thanks, Sean. How can cities better leverage technology to make cities smarter, enable economic transformation, and make cities inclusive, meaning not just benefit the few?
in order to make it smarter, our cities smarter, there's various different bits. So from a utilities perspective, we can be using technology to help us, manage it better, get ahead of the curve. So if we take, by way of example, because we lose so much water, and it's called non-revenue water, it means that those people who are in need, those people who probably have a lack of a lower income bracket, our water is just disappearing underground. If we use technology to help us reduce that, that allows us to make better decisions around who can have things such as water. And it's the same with power. There's a lot of big, heavy users of power that could be more efficient, and yet there's a lot of people in the country that don't have power. And when you've got a shortage, it tends to go to the people that can pay. If we can actually manage our situation better, then it allows us to give us more options in relation to some of the other people that maybe don't have as much income. I think the other thing, we talk about roads. We've got technology now, and that we've got within our business that allows us to pick up the cracks in the pavement. Which you mend a crack, it's a fraction of the cost of mending a pothole. So we've got to get ahead of some of the problems. We've got to use some of the technology to help us solve it. I'm not saying that all the problems can be solved through technology, but it can definitely make us more efficient. And we do have a sort of two-tiered structure here, those with and those without, and those with need to help those without. But, where there's lack of water, then it's a major problem. and we're seeing that in quite a lot of municipalities and provinces. By reducing the flow, reducing the pressure, we can help them at least slow down the problem and reduce that until such time as the sort of the reservoirs, etc., fill up. You have to also remember that, I think it's a really important point. South Africa actually has incredibly good connectivity. We've got the internet and fibre means that we can create an environment that allows us to leapfrog a lot of our people. So we've got sort of world-class sort of connectivity, and we need to use that. It's quite interesting. There's stats around the number of people with smartphones in South Africa is huge. So there's a lot we can be doing. I think there's a lot of education we can be doing, e-learning we can be doing. It's already proven that e-learning can really facilitate students. They can get access through their phones to a lot of wide courses, so we can upskill people. So I think there's a huge amount we can do as a country if we sort of embrace the technology and try and encourage its use throughout the community.
You've mentioned that South Africa has world-class connectivity. There is, however, a lack of digital infrastructure in many smaller towns and townships. What is currently holding back progress, and what does success look like?
Look, I think you've got two-tiered structures. So in respect that you've got the fibre and then you've got sort of the 5G, etc. At the end of the day, businesses will tend to roll out most quickly where they can make the most money. So, that's just a fact. And that's where someone like a regulator comes in and has to encourage, more broad connectivity and encourage, as part of the price to pay, that we roll it out into sort of secondary cities and into the more rural environments. It's not necessarily initially going to be economic to do that, but it's part of the cost of that infrastructure, and it has to be priced in. I think South Africa is encouraging that. I think it's taking time. One of the big problems is technology is moving so fast. It doesn't seem that long ago we were on 2G and now we're on 5G, and from what I understand, 6G is around the corner. So every time you roll out something out, you go to the richer areas and it takes a while to get to some of the not so rich areas. I think South Africa is doing a good job. I think what's probably exciting is the urbanization that we're seeing across Africa more generally. The populations are increasing very quickly in the big cities, and that's got to create an opportunity for us. It's also a threat to us as well, because I don't think the infrastructure supports it necessarily that well, and informal settlements, are quite a challenge for a lot of our infrastructure. But also we have to embrace it, and it could create an opportunity. Yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction at least.
On blockchain, if blockchain can overnight make corruption virtually impossible and give the world renewed confidence in Africa, what steps do we need to take to get there, and who needs a seat at the table?
It's the $1 million question at the end of the day. It's a very good question. How do we get it there? Business can try and embrace it. But it's sort of it's a sort of chicken and egg. It's like the people with the first telephone. Who do you call? Because if no one else has got a telephone, then it's a bit pointless. But I think more and more businesses are looking at it. I think more and more businesses, are thinking about embracing it. You are seeing in other countries. I think Tesla came out the other day saying that they were looking at blockchain. So the very early adopters are there. So I think big business has to look at it very hard, and they can drive it. Especially in somewhere like South Africa, where you have a limited number of very influential companies. If they started to move towards that, then I think South Africa could follow quite quickly. Whether we'd get government to drive it, I think is probably unlikely. Let's be perfectly honest. I think it's going to be difficult for them to do it. So I think it really has to be driven by big business. If you've got someone like an Anglo-American embracing blockchain, at least on this continent, then I think a lot of other suppliers would need to follow. And I think that'd be incredibly exciting, because one of the biggest things that holding South Africa back and a lot of African countries back is the sort of corruption element and the perception of corruption. We can move to a system where that's minimized, then I think it could be overnight changes.
Sean, if I gave you a magic wand and I told you that you could change one thing that will bring you to your vision or smarter city in Africa, What would that one thing be and why?
I think one of the biggest problems that we see in this market, or I see, let's personalize it, maybe one of the biggest problems I see is enacting on decision making. So I think, and I talked to that about the sort of the wider, especially in the public sector. I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of talk about doing the right things. There's a lot of people that are there that have their hearts in the right place. We always focus on the negative, but there are a lot of people there that hearts are in the right place. But I think we struggle with a system that can make sort of aggressive decisions and fast decisions. And if we're going to change South Africa, we're going to need to do something about it. We need to have aggressive, fast decision making. And I know when in a previous role, clients of mine was looking as to whether to build a factory here or build a factory in Brazil. And Brazil had approved it and signed it and given them the funding before we even had the first meeting. It's really interesting. So I just think as a country, if we're going to solve these problems, we're going to have to take some brave steps, make some big calls. As I say to my team, no decision is the worst decision you can make. You've got to make a decision, even if you're not quite heading in the right path. At least make a decision and get momentum forward. But making no decision, and that's when businesses die.
And in closing, what progress do you see in the smart city space over the next 1 and 5 years?
I think in the short term, what I would like to see is the public sector embracing some of the solutions that we have to help solve the issues such as the water crisis and the power crisis. I think that's a short-term goal. We've got to get that sorted because I know no one's going to grow without water and without power. I mean, I've got a business where we do a lot of learning for learnerships, a lot of disabled people. Without water, we've got a massive issue because they can't use a portaloo necessarily that easily. Classrooms are going to be emptied. And without power, we're going to have major issues. So let's get those sorted as quickly as we possibly can. I think over 5 years, what I'd like to see is a move by South Africa, particularly, into forming itself for the future. So I think we've got to change our mindset and say there is no point trying to build people-heavy businesses. We need to start changing our people. And I know Cyril Ramaphosa is quite keen on this. Start training our people for the new age. So I'd really like to see South Africa embracing the future rather than focus necessarily on some of the past industries. Getting people into design, digital design, preparing them for the internet age, because I think that we can make a step change. So I think over 5 years, I think that's what I'd really like to see. I mean, actually re-looking at our education system, re-looking at the training of the people that we're producing. So not necessarily for the heavy industries, because they're going to move out of people-intensive businesses. They're going to embrace technology, robots, etc. So I think we've just got to start producing a new generation of people coming through, and I think that's what I hope we do. And I think then it could be a really exciting future for us, especially with so many of them based in urban locations. So they can get access to information, get access to e-learning, etc. So I think as a country we could really do something different.
A big thank you to Sean Bennet, Group Executive for NEXTEC, for this insightful conversation on how NEXTEC helps in building smarter African cities.